Hey again, everyone. I'm going to continue to play in the Minecraft world I started up just over a month ago, and doing a little more work in the village I'm living in while I, once again, talk about God. In a previous video, I talked about how everyone should commit to their faith in Jesus and not sit on the fence or be lukewarm. But I didn't share much about how one can achieve that and some of the things you should and shouldn't do. So I figured I'd go through the commandments and really try to delve into them a little more. 1. Thou shalt not have any other gods before God. This commandment is a simple commandment from God, that He is the one true God and that any other god is fake, like the gods of different mythologies from ancient times, like the Greeks and the Romans, but also Allah of the Islamic faith, the gods of Hinduism and Buddhism, Baal, and the countless others that people have created over the span of history. And the reason that I list all these is because, again, there's only one true God, who's the way, the truth, and the life. But there's more to this first commandment, because God does not wish for us to idolize anything above Him. But when we prioritize our phones, social media, hanging out with friends or family, school, work, or other personal endeavors over Him, that is the same as having another God before God. And while they aren't a personified God, they become something that we put above Jesus, which breaks this first commandment. And because Jesus is our Lord, nothing should come above Him, especially after everything He's done for us. 2. Thou shalt not make yourself an idol. The wording of this commandment took some time for me to understand, but simply put, do not make yourself into a god. Sometimes it can be easy to do something, whether good or bad, and get lots of attention for it from the people around us. And from that attention, we try to grow more and maintain people's liking to us. But God says not to do this for many reasons. So that 1, we might be more like Jesus, and 2, because it draws others away from the attention that they should be giving to God. Likewise, in the same sense, you shall not bow down and serve them. Do not worship others as gods, those that you might look up to in this world. This circles back to that first commandment. Maybe there's a music artist that you would do anything for, or a famous influencer you strive to be just like, or just someone in general you look up to and try to be like, when God should be in that place, because Jesus is the one that we should always strive to be more like. 3. Thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain. The simple meaning of this commandment is to refrain from the Lord's name in a negative context, or in vain. Because how often do we truly say these things and these different phrases with the intention of promoting or worshiping God when we say them? The answer is almost never. But a deeper dive on this is blaming God for something, or using Him as an excuse to get out of something. For example, you've been invited to a family gathering, maybe for lunch or dinner, but you don't want to go. And instead of either sucking it up and going, or telling them plainly that you don't want to go, you say, "Oh, I have church," or "I have Bible study, so I can't make it, I'm sorry." And so you use God as an excuse not to make it. Or maybe some friends are doing something that, starts a little earlier in the day and takes up most of the day, and you really want to go, but you tell them, "Oh, I can't because I have church, duh." And so you blame God for not being able to go. That said, there is a fine line between blaming God and reluctantly going to church, and actually choosing to go to church instead of that family gathering or to hang out with your friends, which can be hard to decipher and to explain at times. But just make sure that your reasons behind your actions are for God and not because of God. 4. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. This commandment is much simpler than the previous 3, in that it is what it says: keep holy the Sabbath. So on that day, we need to go to church and be in the presence of Jesus and learn His word. And those routine activities like chores, work, school, etc. need to be put aside, because as God rested on the 7th day, He's also allowed us to rest on the 7th day. So leisure, spend time with friends and family, but remember to keep it holy, regardless of what you do outside of the time spent growing closer with God. 5. Honor your father and mother. The commandment is as simple as it sounds, and yet there's still a little more to it. When I was young, I was taught that this commandment simply meant listen to what your parents say, don't disobey them, which of course is correct because your parents are smarter than you are, believe it or not. And not to mention, they are your parents. But upon growing and getting older, I've learned that there's a little more to it than that. It means not to talk down on your parents behind their back, and to defend them when someone else is talking down on them, and to be there to support them no matter how much or how little they've done for you. They are the vessel through which God brought you into the world, and as such, we should honor them. Not to the full extent of a God, of course, but they should rightfully hold a very high place in your heart. 6. Thou shalt not murder. This commandment is blunt, and that is all that it needs to be. God intentionally said, "You shall not kill," and only that, so there is no defining or excusing when you can and can't kill. Whether in a place of war, punishing someone, self-defense, or blatantly murdering, there is zero excuse to kill. Now, I imagine I'll get some arguments for it, but when Jesus came and began his teachings and ministry, he had no justification for killing, and that instead we should love our enemies, and that we are in no place to condemn others to death. I've been watching a lot of Daredevil lately, and I love to see the episodes where Daredevil and the Punisher are together, because Daredevil refuses to kill and wants the judicial system to punish the evil people he fights, whereas the Punisher will not hesitate to kill and would rather kill as their punishment, taking it into his own hands. And while I'm sure many resonate with the Punisher, ultimately Daredevil is more in the right in the sense of not killing, even if we think it is justified, because God is the only one that can truly condemn anyone. 7. Thou shalt not commit adultery. This commandment again sounds pretty simple, but has a little more to it. Adultery itself is when someone cheats on their spouse, but if we look at the teachings of Jesus, lust is one of the most evil sins and we should avoid it at all costs. So when we truly break it down, this commandment calls us to restrain and to show self-control so that we don't just go around having sex with anyone we please, especially because relationships are temporary, whereas marriage is eternal, which is why we are called to wait until marriage. The same goes for masturbation, which unfortunately in this modern world is a very easy and constant temptation, with almost every piece of the blame being the internet and the porn industry. But still, all of this falls under the commandment to not commit adultery, and we should instead try to abstain and save ourselves for when we find our spouse who we're meant to be with and become one with them. So while this commandment again sounds simpler, it's a much more complicated commandment when shown in comparison with Jesus' teachings and the teachings of other parts of the Bible. 8. Thou shalt not steal. This commandment likely needs the least bit of explaining because it is once again very straightforward. Don't steal. Don't steal from stores or gas stations. Don't steal from the person at school or work you don't like. Don't steal from your friends and family especially. I mean, I can echo on this for a while, but it's simple. Don't steal. There's no justification to stealing in this world, despite the philosophical questions that arise, the most common being, is it right for someone to steal food to feed their family? And as God makes blatantly clear, no, it is not. Because if you have enough faith in Jesus, you won't need to steal anything to get it for yourself. He will provide what you need for you, if you have the right amount of faith in him. 9. Thou shalt not testify or bear false witness against your neighbor. The wording on this commandment is a little more complex again, but simply put, it means don't lie. And when God says to your neighbor, that means to anyone, not literally to just your neighbor. It's probably clear that if you've lived for any decent bit of time, you'll have experienced a time where someone lied about you and is gossiping about you, or you were involved with gossip about someone else that was a lie, whether that be through work or school or wherever. Regardless of either situation, it's never a fulfilling feeling to be a part of it, especially being the one that was lied about. And that's why God tells us not to lie or to gossip. Lying and gossiping can destroy friendships and break trust in those that trust in you most. Other times we lie to avoid getting in trouble, especially when we're younger. And while it's hard to fully understand as a child, as we grow older, we realize that being at fault and learning from our mistakes and taking the punishment for it is better than lying about our wrongdoing, especially if we compare the punishment of God versus the punishment from our parents if we lied. 10. Thou shalt not covet. When I first learned about this commandment when I was younger, my understanding was that this commandment was a slightly more complicated version of the thou shalt not steal commandment, with a hint of avoiding jealousy somewhere involved in that. But as I've grown, I've learned now that coveting is a form of jealousy, like seeing what someone else has and wanting it for ourselves. Or even going so far as to thinking that they don't deserve it at all, but we do instead. So when we see someone's house, cars, lifestyle, money, job, family, girlfriend, you name it, and think, man, I want that house, or I want those cars, or even worse, man, they don't deserve that house, and they don't deserve those cars, but I do. That is coveting. God, however, wants us to be supportive of those that have what they have, because whether they deserve it or not, they have it. So, be happy for them and the things that they have, and be thankful for what we have, no matter how much or how little that might be. These are the 10 commandments that God gave us, and seeing just how much is encapsulated in those 10 commandments is probably a little more daunting than what it may have originally seemed, especially to those a little less knowledgeable in the faith, so my bad. But God gave us these commandments so that we might stray from sin and run to Him instead to avoid our sinful nature. And while I covered a lot here already, there is more to be covered in the book of Proverbs, which was referenced pretty heavily throughout this video already. But there are more things that God calls us to do or to not do that are not in the commandments but written pretty plainly there. But there is one more commandment that is the most important commandment of all: to love one another as Jesus loves us. This is the most important commandment of all, and if we can fulfill that commandment always, alongside the other 10, we can surely call ourselves disciples of Jesus.